All right, guys, in the last video, we created our profile model, excuse me, which has all the fields for the profile. So now what we're going to do, we're going to close that up and we're going to go into our routes API profile.js. Now, the first route that I want to handle is a route. It's going to be a protected route that will get the current user's profile. Okay, the current user meaning the user that's logged in at that time. So we're going to bring in a couple things in addition to Express in the router. We want to bring in Mongoose, of course, because we're going to be dealing with the database. So we'll say require Mongoose. All right, we're also going to bring in Passport because we're going to use that for protected routes. And we also want to bring in our keys file. Actually, do we need the keys file? Let's see. What do I need this for anyways? Actually, I don't think we need the keys file yet. Let's just leave that out. All right. Now, we will be doing validation as well, so we'll have to bring those files in when we create it. But I want to get this route handled first. So let's see. Let's also bring in our models, which is the profile model, of course, and we're also going to bring in the user model because we're going to need that at some point as well. So let's say load profile model. So we'll say const profile equals require, and we want to go outside of the API folder, outside the routes folder, into models, and then we want the profile. All right, and then I'll just go ahead and copy that down, and let's say load user profile. So we'll change this to user, change this to user, and now we can use those in Mongoose. All right, so let's go below this little test route that we did here. And I'll copy this header, and this is going to be API profile. It's actually just going to be a GET request to API/profile, and that should get the current user's profile. Now, we're not doing like /ID with the user's ID, because remember, when we have protected routes, we're getting a token that has a payload with the user's information, so we can use that. Okay, which makes it pretty secure, because you have to be logged in to be able to get this. You have to be logged in to get that user's info, if that makes sense. So let's change the description here. We'll say get current user's profile, and we're going to change it to private. All right, so it'll be router dot get, and the route is just going to be / because it's going to be API/profile, and since we're using the router, we already linked this to this file, so we just need / here. Now, since it's going to be a protected route, we need to do passport dot authenticate, and we're using JWT. We're using our JWT strategy that we created in the config file. And we need to say session false. All right, and then we want to go ahead and put a comma right here, and then we put our callback or arrow function. Okay, and that of course has to have a request response, just like any route, and then we can proceed to do what we want, and this is now a protected route. So let's think about what we want to do. We want to fetch the current user's profile. Now, remember, since this is protected, we're going to get a token. That token is now going to put the user into request.user. All right, so we'll have the logged in user's information, and we can get the ID like that. So let's find that user by saying profile, use the profile model, and we're going to use the Mongoose method find one, because we just want to find one record. And then we want to pass in our condition, which is going to be user. Now remember, when we created the profile model, let's take a look at it. We have user, and this is going to include the object ID, which is the user's ID. Okay, so this will match. What we want to match this to is request.user.id. And again, it depends on which user is logged in to what ID this is going to be. Okay, so then, literally then, okay, because it gives us a promise, we want to take the profile that it gives us, and we're just going to do a quick test here to make sure that there is an actual profile. So we'll say if not profile, what do we want to do? We want to return res.status, and remember, a not found is going to be a 404 status. So we want to say .json, and then our error. Now the errors, I don't want to be putting single errors into here. I want it to be an errors object, just like we did in the users. Okay, like for instance, right here. Okay, we have the errors from the register input, and then even down here, if it's not one of those types of errors, it's something from the database, we also put that into the errors object and pass that in. That's kind of the map that I want to use for errors. So what I'm going to do here is up at the top of this route, before we do the find, I'm just going to initialize a variable called errors and set it to an empty object. And then here we can simply say errors, and add to it, we'll say no profile equals, and then the message will say there is no profile for this user. And then we can simply pass in here errors, and that'll get sent as a response. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Now, if there is a profile, which we can just keep going here, then we're just going to send a res.json, which will send a 200 response, which is okay, and we'll send along the profile. Okay. Now, if something goes wrong with the find one, we can do a .catch here. And then what I'll do is we'll take whatever the error is, and we'll say res.status, and we'll do a 404.json, and then I'm just going to send along whatever that error is, okay, that's generated here. Okay, so that should do it. Let's go ahead and save this. Prettier, just knock that down, so it just cleans it up a little bit. So let's go to Postman. And what we want to do here, let's go back to the login, okay? And if you don't have these tabs open still or whatever, just put in your login route, which is this, a post request, and then you can log in with someone that you registered with. If you have no users, then you want to just go to your register route and fill out this info here. All right, so this is obviously expired because it's actually been a day since I've done this. So I'm going to go ahead and send, log in again and get a new token. And then I'm going to grab that token, copy it, and let's see. We don't need this current anymore, I don't believe. So what I'll do is replace the token here with the one I just copied. And then I'm going to go to the route API/profile, which is the one we just created. We want it to be a GET request, and make sure you have that token. That token includes that user. Okay, so let's send, and it says there is no profile for this user. Now this is exactly what we should be getting because we haven't set up a profile. The way that this app is going to work is once you register, it'll take you to your dashboard, but you're not going to have a profile yet. What it will do is, if you don't have a profile, if it gets this response, which is a 404, you're then going to see a button that says, or a paragraph that says you don't have a profile, and then a button that says create profile. Then it'll take you to a form, okay? So this is actually what it should be doing. Now, what we want to do in the next video is create a route that we can actually create a profile. So we'll be able to make a post request, and we'll be able to add all that info, like the bio or the company type, all that stuff, and that will create the profile for us, and then we can revisit this route and make sure that the profile shows up. Okay, so that's what we'll do next.